PC dungeon crawling games were at the height of their popularity in the 1980s and 1990s. It's the genre that spawned the first RPGs and roguelike games we know today. Unfortunately, most of the mechanics used in older dungeon crawls have not stood the test of time. Nowadays, creators rarely resort to traditional solutions, as most players may be discouraged by them. Fortunately, some risk-takers are up to the challenge, and it's thanks to them that several notable titles have appeared on the market in recent years. So check out this list of the best dungeon crawling games. While there are many types of dungeon crawler out there, the Diablo series is practically synonymous with the term, and no other franchise has had as deep of an impact on the subgenre. The original Diablo broke out grid and turn-based dungeon crawling to establish the action RPG blueprint many games still follow today. Diablo 2 ensnared players in its compelling online, loot-driven gameplay. Diablo 3 deepened the series' storyline and successfully expanded its audience to consoles. And now, Diablo 4 defends the series title as the dungeon crawling champ with its persistent open world and live service take on the formula, promising plenty of loot lusting for years to come. Imagine this, a Souls-like isometric dungeon crawler. Death's Door attains this ambitious feat by joining the best aspects of both genres. Gamers play as an anthropomorphic crow tasked with navigating alternate realities and addressing matters concerning old souls. While the premise may sound charming, the battles are intense. Death's Door has garnered acclaim for its art style, gameplay, and narrative, the three cornerstones of any exceptional game. The visuals are exquisite and captivating, the gameplay offers replayability and ingenuity, and the storyline unfolds with multi-layered depth. It's a seamless fusion of elements that results in an outstanding game. Like any rogue-inspired game, you die a lot in Hades, but failed runs sting a lot less in Supergiant's roguelite dungeon crawler than in other games of this style. The hack-and-slash combat is snappy and satisfying, but eventually, you'll succumb to one of the game's many enemies or bosses. Rather than tediously starting over from square one, dying in Hades sends Zagreus back to Hades Court, where players can converse with the game's many well-written characters and upgrade Zagreus' abilities. Even the shortest runs can progress the story, motivating players to venture back into the game's deadly underworld. Path of Exile is a role-playing action game in the dark fantasy world. The player controls an exile by choosing from 7 character classes: Marauder, Duelist, Ranger, Shadow, etc. Through the help of the primary character, the player explores large outdoor areas and dungeons. The gamer needs to initially battle with monsters and fulfill quests from non-player characters to get experience points and equipment. Path of Exile offers several play modes or leagues like Standard, Hardcore, Solo, Self-Found, etc. The game has a never-ending adventure that can be enjoyed even with your friends through multiplayer mode. Given Persona 5 Royal's emphasis on character relationships and social life simulation, it's easy to forget half the game is devoted to some of the best dungeon crawling in the series yet. Persona 5 Royal ditched the randomized mazes of Persona 3 and 4 in favor of bespoke dungeons with unique gimmicks and puzzles. And since the social sim and dungeon crawling aspects complement and weave into one another, exploring these otherworldly labyrinths feels more important than simply diving for loot or experience. Who doesn't like a game with a straightforward story with several challenges? Wizard of Legend is the same. This indie roguelike game became popular among gamers quickly due to its thrilling graphics and storyline. Wizard of Legend is a top-down 2D roguelike game. The player in the game controls a wizard and attempts to cross a 10-floor procedurally generated dungeon. However, the primary goal of the gamer is to win the same title as the name. Is that easy? Well, no! The player has to use various spells to defeat mobs. In addition, to get the title Wizard of Legend, the player must defeat 3 major bosses and a final boss. Wizard of Legend is another interactive game with several interactive elements and functions. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne was a significant evolution for the long-running demon-taming RPG series. Nocturne's best change is the introduction of the press-turn battle system, which evolved combat from basic turn-based fare to puzzle-like encounters. It also broke from the traditional grid-based movement and first-person presentation of earlier SMT games in favor of free movement and third-person camera controls. We recommend picking up the Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD port for PS4 and Switch, which features enhanced graphics and additional difficulty options. Crawl is the first project of Powerwolf Studio with a pretty neat, self-explanatory name. The game is designed for local multiplayer with up to 4 players. One of the players takes on the role of a warrior traveling through the crypts. The others, on the other hand, take control of traps and monsters, trying to direct them in such a way as to eliminate the hero. When this happens, the players switch roles, and the person who managed to kill enters the Daredevil skin. Mechanics are incredibly entertaining during couch co-op sessions with friends, which guarantees hours of fun gameplay. Sounds tempting? Then, check out the list of the best local co-op games on PC. First-person, grid-based, turn-based dungeon RPGs, often called DRPGs by fans, are a popular subgenre in Japan, but most stick to the fantasy trappings of early games like Wizardry and Might and Magic. Undernauts, Labyrinth of Yomi subverts that trend, replacing knights and castles with blue-collar laborers and haunted construction sites. Despite these changes, Undernauts is still a tough-as-nails dungeon crawler that genre vets will love, while its unique setting and quality-of-life updates make it a great intro for DRPG newcomers. Speaking of games published by Devolver Digital, Enter the Gungeon is a 2016 top-down bullet hell shooter that's inspired by retro fast-paced run-and-gun titles like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. After a giant bullet fell from space and crash-landed on planet Ganymede, a magic gun that can kill the past was created from the impact. To protect this weapon, a large shape-shifting fortress was built around its location, which is guarded by the cult of the Gundead. Despite the dangers, adventurers known as Gungeoneers travel to the Gungeon in order to change their own pasts. As one of these Gungeoneers, the player must avoid traps, find treasures, and battle monsters. Besides its challenging gameplay that mixes bullet hells and roguelikes, this game is unique for its immense variety of guns that can shoot anything from missiles to rainbows. Dead Cells isn't just one of the best dungeon crawlers available on Game Pass. It has earned its place among the best titles of recent years. This 2D, movement-driven, action-packed game features procedurally generated biomes, ensuring endless replayability. Yet, its appeal extends further. The choices that players make in enhancing their character and the paths they traverse shape the unfolding events, granting the player full control over the narrative. Dead Cells is the best dungeon crawler on Game Pass for several reasons. First, it incentivizes exploration, enticing players to uncover every hidden corner. Second, its replayability factor ensures that no two playthroughs feel the same. Third, it maintains a perfect balance of challenge, never allowing gameplay to become too easy. Moreover, the developers have integrated Metroidvania elements, ensuring there's always something tantalizing waiting in seemingly unreachable areas. The original Binding of Isaac helped popularize the once niche roguelike and roguelite subgenres back in 2012, but this 2014 remake expanded the game with new story content, additional characters to unlock, and more dungeons to endure. We should mention the imagery in The Binding of Isaac. Rebirth is pretty gross, but beneath the layers of aesthetic filth is a fun action roguelite that's still a joy to play. Dungeon games with roguelike elements are the cherry on the cake, and Children of Morta is a perfect example of this. Children of Morta is an action role-playing video game. The game follows the Bertson family story, who are Mount Morta's custodians. The game has a total of 7 playable characters who are family members of the Bertson family. The player gets control of one of those characters, and other characters get unlocked eventually with achievements. The player's primary goal is to traverse several dungeons within the caverns of Mount Morta, which as a result, will help the player clear various enemies and bosses. Children of Morta is a modern game with a touch of classic themes. While Cult of the Lamb's beautiful art style, slick combat, and fast-paced dungeon exploration easily earn it a place on this list, Many of the game's best parts happen outside of dank and dreary catacombs. You build your own cult between dungeon runs, establishing your congregation's beliefs and goals. As your cult grows in power, you unlock new abilities and perks to aid you in your dungeon crawling. Minecraft Dungeons, bearing the mantle of a world-renowned franchise, successfully steps out of Minecraft's shadow. It delivers a relatively fresh experience by blending Diablo-inspired mechanics with the beloved pixel block art style. The storyline is simple: conquer the dungeons and kill the big bad boss. The gameplay? Not so much. Utilizing an enchantment system, players upgrade their weapons, with each added ability influencing the overall combat experience. Minecraft Dungeons' primary drawback is repetition. While this is a common challenge for dungeon crawlers, Mojang Studios' title struggles to overcome it. Nevertheless, the game's brisk combat pace and appealing Minecraft-inspired aesthetics prove sufficient to gratify most fans. Phantasy Star Online pivoted from the traditional console RPG gameplay of the original for Phantasy Star titles to an online co-op action RPG inspired by Diablo. Players explore deep into the semi-randomized ruins and caverns of the remote planet Raggle, slaying waves of enemies and collecting tons of loot. While PSO is comparatively simple compared to contemporary MMOs and co-op titles, it was a groundbreaking achievement on the Dreamcast and helped bring online gaming to consoles. A list of the best dungeon crawlers without this duo would be incomplete. Difficult but extremely satisfying titles from Red Hook Studio showed players that even old and well-worn mechanics can still be a lot of fun. All you need to do is bind them properly and put them in a stylish, awesome-looking frame. The action takes place in a gloomy fantasy world inspired by the Middle Ages, dark Gothic style, and the novels of H.P. Lovecraft. The gameplay itself is based on very simple rules. A group of player-controlled characters explores the levels full of traps and dangers. The key to success in Darkest Dungeon is to keep an eye on the mental state of the characters. While walking through claustrophobic corridors, they have various fears and phobias that have an impact on combat statistics and contact with comrades in arms. If you're interested in the sequel, Darkest Dungeon 2 brings significant changes. Most notably, the graphics have shifted from 2D to 3D, and your heroes explore the cells by riding a stagecoach instead of walking. However, it retains the same gripping atmosphere that made the original game so engrossing. Legend of Grimrock and its sequel ushered in a renaissance of first-person dungeon crawlers, resurrecting the real-time, grid-based gameplay of Eye of the Beholder and Dungeon Master for modern audiences. The original successfully streamlined old-school blobber RPG gameplay without sacrificing the depth or challenge the genre is known for, and the sequel expanded on the first game with deeper party-building options and sprawling outdoor dungeons. Although sound is an important element to any video game, the 2015 roguelike rhythm game Crypt of the Necrodancer is one of the few games where sound is an integral part of the gameplay. After her father, who was a famous treasure hunter, went missing, Cadence accidentally falls into the Crypt of the Necrodancer while searching for him. Now, she must fight her way through the crypt to regain her heart, find her father, and defeat the Necrodancer. While exploring the dungeons and fighting enemies, the player must move to the beat of the background music in order to become stronger, and they can get hurt or even killed if they lose the rhythm. The success of this title led to the 2019 crossover game Cadence of Hyrule, and a sequel was recently announced titled Rift of the Necrodancer. Notia is a popular roguelike game in a world where every pixel is physically simulated. The player controls a sorcerer that casts spells and creates himself to defeat enemies. This game takes the gamer to a place in a 2D world where the player needs to battle mythological creatures. Noita is a single-player video game with a unique concept. The game takes place in a magical world where you discover new environments as you explore more. Noita is another name for a mysterious game with a pinch of action. Developed by former Blizzard North staff who worked on the horror-based RPGs Diablo and Diablo 2, the 2012 action RPG Torchlight 2 feels like what Diablo 3 should have been, which is a fast-paced, well-polished, addictive experience. Set years after the events of the original 2009 game Torchlight, one of the playable characters from the first game, the Alchemist, decides to use the Elemental Guardians to power up Ordrak's heart so that he can destroy all Ember and cure his own Ember Blight. To stop the Alchemist from destroying the land, the customized player character must navigate through randomly generated dungeons, fight monsters, and gain loot. Unlike the first Torchlight, this game features a longer campaign, more non-dungeon locations, a co-op mode, and other mechanics. Moonlighter features a novel mix of Zelda-like dungeon crawling and light shopkeeping simulation framed by a roguelike gameplay loop. Players manage a fantasy shop by day, selling weapons and trinkets to adventurers. When night falls, you explore randomized dungeons to fight monsters and collect loot to sell the next day. It's a novel, compelling mix that can scratch your dungeon and life sim itches at the same time. This game is a perfect mix of deck building and a roguelike game. I am here talking about Slay the Spire. This game was initially released in January 2019 and was soon considered one of the best roguelike deck building games. At the start of the game, the player selects one of 4 characters. Each character has a starting amount of health, gold, a unique ability, and a deck of cards with basic attack and defense cards. The player's primary goal is to cross several levels of a spire to defeat the boss at the end level. Reaching the final boss is more complex. The player must battle various enemies and creatures to earn rewards, upgrade cards, and more. In this single-player deck game, the player can play any combination of cards as long as they have the energy to pay. Slay the Spire is a strategy game that can simultaneously leave you curious and excited. So, did you like the games I recommended? So leave your like, subscribe to the channel to follow me, and activate the bell because I post a lot of videos on this channel and you can't miss it. Thank you very much for following me this far, and until next time, bye.